But the world just unfolded itself. I didn't even take notes, which I can't believe it now, because when I look back and when I reread, I come across stuff and I genuinely do not remember writing it.
I'm John Barrett Ingalls, and this is Without These Books, a thank you inspired video podcast celebrating the authors, artists, books, and characters that have changed us as writers, readers, and as people. This episode is made possible with support from the Orange County Community Foundation. In today's episode, we connect with New York Times bestselling author Angie Sage, who wrote the incredible 7-book series of Septimus Heap books, which has been translated in over 28 different languages. So thank you, Angie. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you on our podcast.
It's amazing to be here. It's lovely.
So I'd love to start with you talking about one of the books or series of books that inspired you or influenced you at a young age, or encouraged you, or piqued your imagination. What was the book that you chose?
Okay, the book really special to me, and I have the actual book here, is this one. It's
yes.
King Arthur, and because I love drawing too. So look at that.
Oh, that's gorgeous. It's almost like
Amazing.
stained glass.
I had no idea that books could look so lovely. It's a paperback. And when I was 8 and we moved to London, and my dad took me to the bookshop Foyles in Charing Cross Road and said, choose a book. Wow, because I only ever got books from libraries up until then. So I was just drawn to the colours. And I still do, I still love flat colour and big thick lines. And there it was. And these are actually paper cutouts.
Oh, wow.
And the artist is Lottie Reiniger, who probably we shouldn't talk about. She had kind of dubious sympathies. However, she did do great images. So I picked this out, and then I saw, it was about King Arthur. And I took it home and I just read it all that weekend, because we go to the shop on Saturday morning. And I just couldn't put it down. And it's a very old-fashioned book, because, it was old-fashioned times when I was a kid. And so I have read it recently, because I would love to revisit the stories in a kind of modern take. So I was amazed, actually. It was still really accessible. The language is a bit flowery, but the emotion's there. And I think that was quite something, that this guy, he wrote for children, but he didn't talk down, really, sometimes maybe a bit. But compared with what was on offer to kids then, a lot of stuff really talked down. And he didn't. And he told a good story too. And from that, I just learned, I got obsessed with history. I really did. I still absolutely am amazed by the fact that so much happened in the past that we, all those lives lived.
Right.
And to me, that is just, when you stop and think about it, it still blows my mind. So to read this, and I think, having read the sources now, he did a good job.
Were you familiar with the stories of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table at that point?
Not until then. Oh. No, I not really. To be
introduced to it in a book form, I think might be
I guess I had read about Merlin. Okay, this is my other, I've got a few here. This is my old history book.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is so awful. I would never recommend anybody reading it. It's completely bigoted, and how history was taught then. But do you know what? It was written with love for children. It's written by a woman. H.E. Marshall was a New Zealand woman, which I never realized. And it's written with such love for the readers. So that's why I love that book. And there was in there a thing about the sword in the stone, which are, and the pictures as well. Amazing. Here we are. Okay. How about that for old fashioned? So I mean, it's just Victorian romance, really. But so that's all I knew. I just knew that. And then I read all about the stories and the interweaving of people's lives. I thought that was nicely done. And I think that was always my benchmark for how complex a story should be. I like to have different layers. And so the other ones I loved were as Robin Hood. I've got Robin Hood here. There we are. And that's the same guy, Roger Lancelyn Green. So that was my Robin Hood book. And it was great. It was great. I still think King Arthur has one over on Robin Hood, but Robin Hood wasn't bad.
Well, so, I would imagine, I'm going to come across as like, being oblivious here, but I would imagine growing up in United Kingdom that these are stories, like these are folklore legends. We would have, I guess, like Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed, or like the glorification of the founding fathers here in the States. But these are the legends of the United Kingdom.
It's true, actually.
It's that branch of like pseudo history, but like
it's very pseudo, but it's lovely because it fires your imagination. And I guess that there are sort of bits that are real in it, but who knows which bits they are.
Right.
But yeah, I'd never thought of it like that, but it is a very British take on things. Very, yeah, it would be totally different.
I mean, I was fascinated by knights growing up. And again, it's similar to you. It was all about the imagery. I mean, the stories were wonderful, but I had this book, and I still have it somewhere. And it was the story of all of the Knights of the Round Table with these beautiful painting images of, Galahad and Gawain.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I liked that it was like elegance and masculinity together and the chivalry. But yeah, I think that there's something, and the magic of it all that ties in.
I think the magic is something that really stayed with me, that underlying thing of magic that you could never quite be sure that the person who turned up at these feasts they kept having was who they said they were. And I love that. And
you kind
it was
of
only by
play with that a little bit in your stories as well, of like magic changing the way someone appears, and they may look like someone other than who they are.
Exactly. And I, until I was talking to you about this, I hadn't actually made that connection. So that's really interesting, I think.
Well, and even like, and again, part of me if I sound ignorant, but even, we had talked before our conversation, we talked a little bit about Tolkien, and Tolkien is a very British author. Even though he wrote in this fantasy world, you definitely felt like it was kind of like a reimagining of a fantastical British history from another time and another world. Almost to the point where, I believe it was when he was pitching the Silmarillion that it was they were saying that it was almost too Celtic for publication.
Yes. Yeah. It's very, I mean, Tolkien is so rooted actually in the city of Oxford as well. I mean, it really, as you say, it's very British, and it's got that sort of slant on it. But all these, I love the way that people, writers, dip in and take different bits. And the more you read, the more you can gather together to make the whole picture.
I would love to talk a little bit about your work because I'm always fascinated when somebody takes on 7 books for a series like that. I mean, and get it done in 7 years' time too.
It was almost, yes.
But
I overran a bit.
at the beginning, at the early stages of the Septimus Heap series, did you know that this was going to extend as long as it did? Were you just writing one story and then it became too big and you knew, oh, I'm going to have to write more?
Yes, that what I did was I knew that it was a world, but really I thought it was 3 books. And so I told my publisher, yeah, 3 books. And they were good with that. And as the world grew, and it was the first novel, full-length novel I'd ever done. I'd done chapter books before, but I with Septimus, I didn't feel I had to put the handbrake on. I could allow it to expand. And that really helped because my editor on my contract, she specified a book of 100,000 words, which I was a novice at this. I had no idea that was actually quite a long book. And as I got on, I thought, gosh, I'm not even halfway. And then I pull something else in. I think, well, I need something else. And I think you can tell that in the early books that I probably layer quite a lot on, and I get better later at organizing the story. But no, the whole thing just grew, and the characters grew, and they kept coming. But there was something odd about writing it, and it was so exciting because the world began to feel like it actually existed. I mean, see, I do realize it doesn't, but it had.
But you made it. You made it exist.
It was grounded in some kind of weird reality, and I felt I could just go somewhere in it, and I could find stuff, and everything came together and made sense. And often I would write about things and I think, oh, I don't know about that, and I'd Google it and I'd find that there was something very similar that I absolutely sure I didn't know about, but subconsciously I must have done. I would find that I was writing old legends, which I guess I must have read at some point. But it was very, very exciting. And so the story grew, and it did. And then I remember I said to Catherine Teagan, wonderful editor and publisher, she just said, do 2 more books, that's great. And then when I was getting towards the end of Quest, she was fine with 2 more. And she was just fantastic. And I don't think there's many people that would have been like that. So, but that's
when you were done with Quest, though, did you know that the story wasn't completed at that point?
Yes, because it's strange that I began to feel other things unfolding. And also after Quest, I don't know, there was things to do with Jenna that I wanted to explore, and Merrin and stuff like that. And it just seemed to want to keep going. And also I had this idea that I wanted to send the kids off on holiday. So, which is why we did Siren, which of course wasn't a holiday at all. It was absolutely terrible jeopardy for them. But I also was really getting into the structure of the world. So like the old technology, and trying to work out the alchemy stuff and the way all these kind of tunnels, which I figured were old nuclear fusion things, everything like that. I mean, I never really actually elaborated that, but in my mind, I had looked up things about nuclear fusion and, you know, how you do it or don't do it.
When you tackle something like this,
Yeah,
so at the beginning you knew it was just gonna you thought a trilogy at the very
I did.
um, how much work did you have to do on world building and creating kind of like the laws of physics for this world?
Well, I went mainly by our laws of physics here, pretty much, you know, matter can't be created or destroyed, that sort of thing. Um, but, you know, the world just unfolded itself. I didn't even take notes, which I can't believe it now, because when I look back and when I reread, I come across stuff and I genuinely do not remember writing it. You know, it's odd, but when I was in the groove, I felt like I knew everything to do with it. But of course, when I finished, there's a bit of your brain that packs it away. And although I went back to it with TodHunter Moon, that was different. I don't know why it was less intense. And also, Catherine had said to me, please make them a bit shorter. Please, she said, just a bit shorter. So I did. And that actually meant that I stripped out a couple of layers, which was good. I think it makes them nicely approachable.
Did you think that you were writing for a certain age group? Did you have that in mind, or were you just writing to tell these stories?
I was writing for about 11, 12-year-olds upwards. And when I say upwards, I had no upper limit. And I know that with bookshops, they'll put a ceiling of 14 or 16 or whatever on. But for me, all I wanted was it to be okay for a younger one to read, and also okay for a 20, 30-year-old or a grown-up to read. So I never had a top age cap in the way that if you go into a bookshop, it will have that. So that was really important. And what I love now is that I get letters from people in their 20s and 30s who first read it when they were 11, 12, whatever, and they're rereading and they're saying, yeah, I still love it. And now I'm noticing other things that I didn't notice before. And that's great. I just had in mind somebody, I actually had in mind somebody who would quite like to live there, and that we could just go exploring together. And that's how it's turned out.
I have to ask
for readers, I think.
I have to ask this for my daughter, otherwise I'll get in trouble. But she wanted
Right.
to know what your inspirations were for creating the characters of Marcia and Jenna and Septimus and Marin. She wanted to know what the inspirations for those characters were.
She's got a broad taste. Okay, now Marcia is the only one who I can say does relate to somebody I knew. And I never realized that. It was quite a revelation when 3 or 4 books in, and I realized who it was. So she is somebody who was called Maria, and I hope she won't mind me talking about her. She knows that she is my sort of template. I used to share a flat with Maria. She was a few years older than me, and that was in London. And we had a flat at the top of a house. So we would walk up all these little stairs. And Maria was an immunology research student doing magical stuff about T cells that she used to tell me about. I was just amazed. And she loved purple. So when I looked Maria up, to tell her, because we'd lost touch, but I knew where she was working. There was a photo of her and she was wearing purple. And so I got in touch and I said, you know, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for being Marcia. And so she read the books and she got back to me. She said, I was never that bossy, was I? No, not at all. But I said, I always did feel like I was your apprentice. You were always teaching me such a lot. So Maria is my only template. And the rest, I think, are a mixture of how, well, oh gosh, I hope I was going to say mixture of how I am. I hope I'm not too much like Mary. Maybe I am. So Septimus and Jenna, I think, are just both. I would have loved to have been Septimus. And I love the way Jenna approaches what will be her job. I really like that, and how she sort of deals with it. Merrin, I wonder if he's based on my brother. I'm not sure. There's a certain little brother aspect to Merrin, I suspect. But Merrin was funny because I really did want Merrin to be okay and to learn from what he was doing, because he had a terrible start. I mean, I just cannot imagine what his life must have been like. And it was awful. And so I kept trying to give him a way to come back from that, you know, meeting his mother again. And every time he messed it up, he just threw it away. And I think if I wrote about him again, he still would. But people love Merrin. So there's a little bit of Merrin in all of us, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we all can relate to that. Was there any inspiration or what was how did being a parent and being a mother inspire you in creating these younger characters?
Well, I suppose you do look at how your children behave. I think writers are quite self-obsessed, really. And to be frank, I was probably writing more about how I'd felt at their age, if I'm honest. But then I would also see the way they would have this toing and froing between their friends and the kind of repartee, you know, and how sharp they were with each other sometimes, and just what fun they had. So I guess that seeped into it as well. But I do think writers are quite self-obsessed, and we often write for ourselves, if truth be known.
Well, Angie, I want to just thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, out of your evening to chat with me. I am going to get so many brownie points from my daughter. But it was such a pleasure to chat with you today.
Well, please say hello to your daughter from me. And I'm so glad she enjoyed all the books. It's just lovely. And thank you for getting in touch. It's been really great.
Join the conversation at withoutbooks.org.